too far along.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Yes, we are recording. Good call, Holly. Um, so yeah, so this is Forefront. That's who we are. This program we have today around GATA is core to that mission of educating our sector on GATA and how you can be better engaged with state government and work on different programs the state is working on as well. Along with the policy work that Holly, who you just heard from, and I do every day to advocate on behalf of the sector. We have so many other benefits of joining Forefront as a member, as a nonprofit member of Forefront, from our peer skill sharing program that is really incredible opportunities to learn from your peers all across the sector, to our library that provides so much amazing research and help in identifying fundraising opportunities, to our fiscal sponsorship work, to our mission sustainability initiative that helps identify ways that organizations can partner together and find efficiencies between each other, and so many other things. And if you have any questions about membership, whether you are a member, how to join, you can obviously reach out to anyone at Forefront. Our membership manager, Doris Bowens, also is great, but anyone at Forefront will be more than happy to answer any questions and help you join and become part of our larger mission and organization. In terms of the policy team, so you just saw Holly a minute ago giving a really helpful reminder about the recording. Um, uh, our policy team is small but mighty, but we come with really great experience both in our sector as well as in state government in Illinois and across the country, as you can see. We wanted to sort of provide that context and introduction to what our policy team looks like, because policy is so often sort of a personality-driven sector in some ways, and so knowing who your advocates are in the nonprofit sector is so important for you to see why we're doing the work that we're doing. Um, in terms of where we're advocating, we do federal, state, and local advocacy work, partnering with many of the organizations that you see here on a very regular basis. At the federal level, our national partners at National Council of Nonprofits, United Philanthropy Forum, Council on Foundations, and Independent Sector are all great leaders in convening organizations across the country that represent our sector to help do national advocacy on nonprofit and philanthropic priorities. At the state level, we are working with lots of different nonprofit partners like yourselves, like Illinois Partners for Human Service, who Lauren you'll hear from in just a moment, Alliance for Illinois Community Foundations, Arts Alliance, Environmental Council, and so many others that we work with at the state and local levels to advocate on behalf of our sector. And I'll talk more about what that looks like at the end and how you can get involved, but I'll turn it over to Lauren to give some more context on GATA and why we're all here today.
Thanks so much, Alec. It's really wonderful to be here. As Alec mentioned, my name is Lauren Wright, and I'm the Executive Director of Illinois Partners for Human Service. We are so grateful to collaborate with Forefront on a lot of different issues, GATA being one that historically we have worked quite a bit on, in partnership, of course, with the leaders at GATA, who you'll hear from in a little while. We know, as a coalition of about 850 or so health and human service providers across the state, we know that GATA has been a consistent and persistent issue that has kind of come up in a lot of our work and in a lot of our advocacy around how do we make accessing state government dollars and partnering with the state more effective and more efficient. And so these types of webinars where we can dive deeply into how to actually partner with and work with the state around some of these issues are really, really important to us. We also work very closely with Forefront in the Health and Human Service Coalition of Illinois, which you saw all the little logos on the previous slide, which is essentially a coalition of coalitions. So if your organization is a member of some sort of association that is related to health and human services, they're very likely a part of our coalition. And we work together to create an omnibus bill this past legislative session called the Community Partner Fair Contracting Act, which addressed a whole range of issues that I'm not going to get into right now, but GATA was one piece of that, and addressing how we can better partner with the state, but also how we can kind of streamline some of these pain points and fix some of these pain points related to GATA. So really quickly, I'll pass it to Holly. Holly was the leader behind the Community Partner Fair Contracting Act, did a ton of work in partnership with state agencies and our legislators to move some of those provisions forward. There's still a lot of work to do, but Holly, if you want to just speak to any of the GATA related to provisions in Community Partner Fair Contracting, that would be great.
Sure, it's been a long journey with a lot of smart people at the table and direct service providers at the table as well. So it all began a couple years ago when we decided to do some research and look at where some of the biggest pain points are in terms of contracting with the state. And we did that collectively through the Human Services Coalition that Lauren mentioned. And we disaggregated all of those results to look at geographic patterns and demographic patterns. And by that, I mean, for example, agencies or direct service providers that are led by or serving persons of color. We wanted to understand if they were having the same experience as other agencies. And we found some concerning patterns in terms of disparities there that I know won't surprise many folks, but that really motivated us to dig in and look more closely at what was going on. And so we put together an extremely thorough omnibus bill that looked at the entire process. So starting from when folks first apply for funding and get their grant agreement and their contract, and then start getting paid, and all the way through the process to the point where in some cases, payments are made before the lapse period ends, and then agencies are pursuing claims through Court of Claims. So this was a very robust bill, and it unfortunately did not get a hearing this year because some of the grant-making agencies at the state needed to sit down and talk to us. We're going to continue those negotiations. So by the end of session this year, we were able to hone in with the help of Lori and some folks in her office on provisions that specifically look at GATA statutes, and we identified a list of agreed provisions, and we're hopeful that we can reintroduce a bill that to start kind of chipping away at this by getting those agreed provisions enacted and then tackling the more difficult issues in ongoing negotiations and conversations with the agencies. So those agreed provisions do things like clean up the statute to conform to federal changes that have occurred since GATA was first written, updating definitions, but it also does more substantive things like looking at defining fringe benefits, expanding the definition of direct costs so that it includes things like supervision that is required for a direct service, where right now that's a bit of a gray area. And then also trying to do a better job with outreach. So asking the agencies that publish grants to learn how to reach previously underserved communities better and get more providers from those communities into the state contracting system. And then also the federal government right now is making changes to the single audit level, the single audit rate and the overhead percentage. So beginning October, the federal government will allow the overhead percentage to move from 10 to 15%. So we're hoping the state will conform to that change in statute and create a higher floor for that. And then also the single audit level will go from 750,000 to 1 million. And so same thing, asking or conforming our state laws to those changes. So there's much more to come on this. This is a long-term commitment for all of us that are working on it. So we really encourage you to, if you're not clear how to get plugged in and follow our work on policy changes like this, make sure you let us know and we'll help you do that, because we need to hear your voices and your stories so that we can share those with legislators when we're talking about how to make these changes. And I just want to recognize Lori and her colleagues at her office for being willing to sit and talk to us about this, because it's hard work and it's stressful and it's a lot of minutia. So we're just really grateful that we're all at the table and hopeful that things will be better in the future as a result. So if anybody has questions, let us know, but I know that's not the focus of our event today, so we'll return our time and efforts to understanding GATA better. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lauren and Holly, for that really helpful context and information about what we're doing to make GATA better. But of course, that is, as Holly said, an ongoing process that's going to take some time. But we have a system of GATA now. And so as nonprofits are trying to get engaged and try to navigate that system now, we are so thrilled that Lori Beeler and her team from the Governor's Office of Management and Budget are here to do exactly that, to explain how GATA works, how you can navigate that system, and how you can learn all the tips and tricks to make it go as easily as possible. So I will turn it now over to you, Lori, and we're so excited to hear from you.
Well, thank you. And I do want to say thank you to both Forefront and Illinois Partners. It is our pleasure to be working together on GATA and on the requirements. I have a slide at the very end of the presentation that says requirements aren't optional. But the point with that slide is that the requirement may not be optional, but how we carry that out, we can look and find the best practices. We can work together and identify what does need to happen. How can we meet those requirements that is in everyone's best interest? So tall order, I realize, but very thankful and appreciative to be included in discussions and talking through, you know, where are the pain points? What are some best practices? And what are ideas on how we can do a better job? So I am the director of the Grants Accountability and Transparency Unit, and we're in the Governor's Office of Management and Budget. I have been a part of the GATA process from the very beginning, as far as part of the commission that wrote the legislation, ran many work groups in enacting or carrying out, implementing that legislation, identifying rules and frameworks and such for both agencies and grantees. And now here I am today as being the director of the unit. So I'm also excited. I have Adriana Perez with me today. She is new to the GATA team, but she is not new to GATA. She does have experience as a CAO in a state agency. I'll let her introduce herself. So Adriana, if you could take a minute and introduce yourself, please.
Sure. Thank you. Again, my name is Adriana Perez. I am with the Get You team, and my experience basically comes about 23 years of experience working in grants in all different levels of grant, meaning from reporting to our federal grant tours to compliance and everything that comes in between. So I did come from another state agency where it took me some time to decipher what the GATA rules are and the compliance, as well as assisting our grantees on how to apply for grants as a granting agency. So a lot of inside information on what to look for when you are applying for or looking for grants.
All right, thanks, Adriana. All right, so deciphering GATA, we'll go ahead and jump in here. So just what we're going to look at here, we've got just a little overview of GATA, and then we're going to jump into how can you be ready for a grant? What are the steps you need to take in how you're doing that, And we're also going to cover revisions to the uniform guidance. And I would ask Alec if you could check to make sure that this is the I had sent an update with some additional slides.
Oh, yes, I did.
And
add
I
those
don't
slides.
see this. I put it on the talking points, so I just want to make
Okay,
sure
sorry.
that our slides are there for
The
when we
slides
get
are
to
there.
that.
Sorry, I just didn't
Yep.
update the talking point slide. Don't worry.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. All right, GATA 101. Just a high level look at what GATA is, how it came about, and why it's so important. So as you know, Illinois as a whole, we rely heavily on grants, working with our partners in carrying out programs. In addition to, you know, building and repairing statewide roads and infrastructure, you know, we have those grants with the community-based organizations. We really rely on your organizations to help us deliver essential services to those who most need it. And Illinois' program and service success is directly related to the success of its grantees. Or in other words, Illinois is successful when you're successful. So it is in the state's, the state agencies' best interest to work and to partner with our providers. So it is definitely a relationship that we want to continue and to be successful. So hopping in the Wayback Machine, why did GATA come about? So basically, the human service grantees, those like yourselves, demanded consistent and compliant requirements for all grants, regardless of where the funding came from, regardless of what type of organization you are. You wanted to be subject to the same rules. And that makes complete and perfect sense. Why, you know, so that is the intent of GATA, providing one set of rules, regardless of your funding, regardless of your organization type, regardless of what the program is. Now, obviously, not every program fits into the same nice little mold. So we do have exceptions and, you know, some things that do need to be different for specific type programs, specific actions. But in general, we have a uniform grant agreement. We have uniform applications, guidance out there for all agencies to follow and putting their NOFO together, et cetera. And we'll talk more about that. So really, this drove the need for us to look at it and to establish that Grant Accountability and Transparency Act. Exciting, exciting, coming up next month in July. We'll be celebrating 10 years of GATA being a law. And if you've been a part of this long enough to know the actions that took place. So in July of 2014, GATA was enacted. Well, in December of 2014, 2 CFR 200 went into effect. That timing, it leads to the perception that GATA just made all of this up, that GATA is responsible for all the rules. We established it all, when we did not. We simply adopted that federal uniform guidance to be used as the state rules. So our rules, we try to be very consistent or mirroring what the feds do. What are their requirements? So that's just a little quick synopsis of how GATA came to be. So as we've worked through and established those frameworks, we determined that we needed to identify what was subject. And so state issued awards. We determined that that would be our terminology for any federal assistance awarded by a state grant-making agency using state, federal pass-through, or a combination of those sources of funding. So if you receive a grant award from a state grant-making agency, we refer to it as a state-issued award, and it is subject to GATA. Just a few statistics here as to where the funding mainly comes from. We have our 8 largest grant-making agencies. We consider those our GATA advisory agencies, and 95% of all grant funds that are expended are administered by one of those 8 grant-making agencies. And as you can see, I've identified those there. As COVID came about and all that additional funding, and it's continuing, there may be a few other agencies that are scaling up on that advisory agency list, but at this point, those are our agencies we consider. And we confer with them more often and make sure that those are our agencies that we reach out to. How are you doing X? What issues are you having with any of the processes, etc.? Yes, we include all state grant-making agencies in overall conversations, but we really do look to these larger agencies to help guide us, make sure that, you know, we're staying on course and that the agencies are carrying out and able to function appropriately. We also established the catalog of state financial assistance to have one source of all grant funding that is available. And as you can see, we have more than 2,500 programs that are active at various points during our year. On average, we have about 47,000 awards annually that are processed through the GATA system. Pardon me. And right now we have more than 9,200 active grantees. While in our grantee portal that we'll talk about later, we have over 17,000 organizations registered in our grantee portal right now. And as you can see, a little more than half of those actually do receive awards that are that at any given time. And about half of our grantees, they receive grants from multiple state agencies, which highlights the importance of having those uniform templates and frameworks. All right, so we will hop in and we'll start talking about the grant making process. And I believe I was going to hand this over to, handing this over to Adriana at this point.
Great, thank you so much. So what is involved in the grant making process? The process is one where we really need to take a look at the different steps, the different parts that are part of the entire Grant Accountability and Transparency Act, and where that basically came from. So some of the requirements have to do with registration within the GATA grantee portal. Some of this also has to do with what are some of the process that are part of the pre-award, as well as the award and then post-award. So there are different stages that all grantee or applicants would be going through, all of it having to do with securing and establishing a uniform process. So as we look at the different stages, or what we call the grant life cycle, this is where we really need to take a closer look at where am I? I as a state, as a am applying in agency, what part of this life cycle do I find myself, and who or how do I ask for assistance? So depending on where you are, there's different requirements, different responsibilities that both you as an applying agency or a grantee has versus the state an agency's responsibilities. So what does all of this mean? We are all in the same trajectory, basically saying that everybody needs to be registered within the GATA grantee portal, as well as our state agencies need to provide information within that same portal, but in the different sides. So here we're going to see all of the different ways that you as an applying agency, as a registered agency within the GATA grantee portal, the different parts and the different places in which you would need to make sure that your registration is kept up to date. So we always begin with creating the account. Many of us in this webinar may already be registered. You would have filled out some basic information. You should always make sure that your UEI registration is updated, as well as your SAM.gov registration. All of these would be handled outside of the GATA grantee portal. There's other requirements that you may have to meet. Some of them have to do with making sure that your Secretary of State is kept up to date, and also looking at different parts within the GATA grantee portal and who is responsible within your agency to make sure that all of the sections, all of the parts are kept up to date. Some of this has to do with like the internal control questionnaire, the ICQ. This is a part of the GATA grantee portal that is available, and sometimes it is completed by one person. Other times it's completed by multiple people within your organization, depending on the size of your organization. So we're also going to show you the different things that you could look at, the different things that you should make sure that are kept up to date when and if you're considering for applying for state funding. So the different types of the grant application and the award process. What does this mean? We always begin with the notification. How do I know where the money is unavailable or what's unavailable? All of this begins with the notice of funding opportunity, which some of us may have heard, NOFO. That's what we're looking for anytime we see the funding opportunity that is posted. We look at it and see, am I qualified? Am I eligible? Do requirements that are stated within that opportunity? If yes, then is my agency able to comply with the program? Does it fit my program? The other part of the award process has to do with the merit review. If this is a competitive opportunity, you want to make sure that you are answering all of the requirements that are part of that notice of funding opportunity, as everyone would be competing for a piece of that pie, a piece of that grant. So once all of the eligibility requirements are met, your application is submitted and it goes through that merit review process, then it is determined if that application that was submitted is eligible for or qualified for an award. Then that application moves into the award process, where they will then look at all of the different types of requirements, looking at the budget, looking at what is the expectation for that period of performance. Is this grants that I applied for 12 months, 6 months, 24 months? what am I going to do with those funds? That's where that award stage comes in. So this is the part that we always want to receive is, I received this grant, I was eligible. There are other than requirements that come into place here. Let me advance my slide. Let me see, I'm trying to move this forward. Alec, are you able to move this forward? I'm not able to move this. Move the slide. Did we lose? Hang on, let me see if oh, there we are. We're back. All right. We just want to make sure you were paying attention. I'm teasing. Okay, so when we get awarded that grants, the one that when we applied for, then it comes time to implement, meaning there are different types of things going back to that requirement. We always want to make sure that we not only have registered within the GATA grantee portal, but that we maintain our registration. There's always a part of maintenance that is involved, both as a grant recipient, even as a person that is interested in applying for a grant that has already registered within the portal. You always want to make sure that everything is kept up to date. There's also parts that you would have to meet that are part of compliance. This comes with reporting. What type of documents do I need to keep a record of? How am I spending this money? What are the different types of receipts or different types of accounting that I need to take place? Not even having to do just specifically with your budget, but with the people that you serve. Are different types of records being kept on the type of programming that you are offering? Does this program, did it require some type of pre-test or post-test type of a measure of success for your program? So these are all of these things that you would need to keep in mind as you are a recipient of a grant. It's not just putting in your vouchers for the budget and the program funds, but making sure that the services that you are providing coincide with the funds that are being expended. This is the part that oftentimes we kind of lose track of, but we want to make sure that your program is being successful. If there's ever a time where you feel, I'm not sure, maybe when I applied, I was a little overzealous. I put in more higher numbers, but now I see that maybe I'm serving less people. Don't worry about that. You need to make sure you're keeping open communication with your state agency, and they will assist you in maybe adjusting your performances for that as you progress within that program. There's also this last part that has to do with closeout. The information that is available with as far as making sure that your program did what it was supposed to do, that your budget, that you kept within that budget, that you requested those funds, and that you are keeping record of not only the type of services that you provided, but also your staffing, always keeping track of time and effort that your staff that is funded through this program is being kept up to date. So how do I prepare? Are we ready for state grants? So within all of this, I've talked about the GATA grantee portal. Some of us are familiar with it. This is a screen snip of what the actual site is from the GATA grantee or the GATA website when you click on the GATA grantee portal. There are different types of functions here, basically from signing in brand new to even Amplifund. Amplifund, we're going to talk about just a little bit within this presentation, but Amplifund is the grant management system that many state agencies have already begun using, that will be not only a part of the grant application, where you would be submitting your application, but also where you would be tracking your progress and submitting your vouchers or your fiscal reports to receive your funding. It is all connected with many different types of external systems, all of it to simplify the grant process. So there's a lot of information here, but one of the things that also is recommended is that you are always looking and maintaining your GATA grantee portal. So this is what you will see when you first register, first time registration. Some of us may have already created an account many years ago, maybe even back to 2017. So this is something that if you have moved, if your organization has changed an address, you need to make sure you not only update it within the GATA grantee portal, but you also make sure that your address is maintained and updated in sam.gov. As these two systems communicate with each other, you want to make sure everything is being consistent within all of the systems. I also mentioned the Secretary of State registration. You want to make sure that that is also kept up to date with as far as your address and even staff information if there has been changes. So oftentimes when you are applying for state funding or considering to apply for state funding, you always want to make sure that your status within the GATA grantee portal is good. You always want to see that nice green line that says currently in good standing. Currently in good standing with all pre-qualification requirements. You must meet these pre-qualification requirements in order to submit an application within any type of state agency. You want to see that all of your status are good. So what happens if one of them is not? It says cannot be found or need more assistance. This is the part that I always refer to as a little self-help. You would click on the help button, and when you click on the help button, it gives you information on how to remedy that issue. It provides different info to the site that will help you get that status back to good. It will also help you determine certain numbers that you may need regarding just to make sure that that status is kept up. I will say that this information to update this, anything within SAM should not cost you anything. I've heard at different points where some people have told me that they were charged $500, $250. That is not something that is correct. Although you could hire people to assist you with this, all it takes is a little bit of time on your part. So please make sure you just take a breath, look at the site, click on the help button, and you will be able to remedy any of these statuses that were not in good standing. The one that you may have to pay for is the Illinois Secretary of State registration, but the fee is minimal. It is, I think, $5 or $10, depending on the type of agency. So please just make sure you are taking a breath, you're looking at your site, and you're making sure that you are maintaining this. You always want to be in good standing. Remember, your SAM.gov registration does expire yearly. It doesn't cost anything. You just have to remember, put it in your Outlook calendar, put it in your calendar on your phone that you, for your agency, you should be updating this information. So I spoke about an Amplifund, and within an Amplifund, one of the things that you would need to get into is making sure that the correct people are part of this registration. So before I get into this, somebody had asked, where can you find this pre-qualification status? All of this is found when you log into the GATA grantee portal. So when you log in, I'm going to go back. When you log in and you are signing in there, you will get to a blue screen. And if you scroll down, it's only about maybe 3 sections down, you're going to see pre-qualification status. Just because I came back to this, I do want to say that you should make it a habit to log into your GATA grantee portal at least maybe 3 times a year, if not 4. If you are actively looking for funding opportunities, then I would encourage you to log into your GATA grantee portal at least once a month. Why? Because you want to make sure that everything is good, that you are ready to apply for funding opportunities whenever you see them. So who should have access to your GATA grantee portal? Who should have access to an Amplifund? The answer is always, it depends. It depends on your agency. It depends on how your organization is structured. You may, maybe you are a mighty organization of 5. Then it will depend on what each of your 5 staff people's responsibilities are. That is something that you will determine internally. It is not something that we would dictate to you. The one thing that is a strong advisement is that you have at least 2 to maybe 3 people registered from your organization in the GATA grantee portal. Why? Because sometimes if somebody leaves your agency, you don't want to be that one person that has left your agency to be the only person that was registered in the GATA grantee portal. Then you find a active notice of funding opportunity that you are interested, only to discover that that person has long gone and they didn't provide the information for the rest of you to log into the GATA grantee portal. So those are certain type tips that I want to make sure that but in the GATA website, we do provide a GATA new user guide. And this is something that we recommend. It is step by step ways in which you will not only log in, but also maintain your status, as well as the Amplifund, providing information to within an Amplifund. And to log into Amplifund, you will have a public.external.illinois account. And this always starts with the @ and many times people think this is an email. It is not an email. It is just an extension to your name to log into the both sites, the GATA portal and the Amplifund system. So how do I know? Well, within the GATA grantee portal, this again is part of the blue screen, you're going to see that maybe I only want Kim from my agency, she is my um, granting person, and she's the only one that should have access to an Amplifund to apply for grants within my agency. There is different types of access that you could give within the GATA grantee portal. So all of it just depends on who is managing this information. Notice that there's two different sections: GATA grantee portal and access, and organization contacts. What's the difference between the two? Organization contacts is simply that, a list of the contacts of the people that are part of your organization in case there are questions from the state awarding agency when you become a grantee. It doesn't mean that these people have access to the portal. It just means that maybe this is the person to contact. Think of it as a directory of sorts. So that is that distinction. All of this is managed by you within the GATA grantee portal. You click on the manage button, and then you can edit and adjust this information as you see fit for your organization. So here again, once you click that edit button or manage, you will then see if you want to give them access to the GATA grantee portal or only an Amplifund. Or if you want to give access to both, you would click on both. This information is available within the GATA user manual with a little bit more screen snips for you to follow, just to make sure you're along the same path here. There's also different types of notifications. If you want to receive certain alerts when your ICQ is ready to be renewed for the next year, when the system does send alerts when your SAM.gov is about to expire. The alerts begin 3 months before, and it's just a little reminder, hey, your SAM.gov will expire in 3 months. If it wasn't updated, it will remind you within 1 month. If it's the same month that your SAM.gov is expiring, but you didn't update it yet, it will remind you weekly until you get that done. So some of you may say, I've never received a reminder. This is where you may want to log back in and see what type of notification and alerts these go to. They are auto-generated, which means it is just part of the system reminder. So it's always different tips there for you to keep track of. So where do I find funding? You keep talking about, you know, when I become a grantee and things, but where do I find it? So you would find it within the GATA grantee, within the GATA site. This is a screen snip of the GATA site, specifically the CSFA, the Catalog of State Financial Assistance page. Now notice here, you could browse different lists, but the last one here, the third one says, click here to browse a list of the funding opportunities. You should click there and find many different funding opportunities that are currently active. Another thing you can do that's relatively new, I would say about a year now, is you could subscribe to weekly mailing. And here is where you would click on that link. It is an email. It comes as a listserv where you will receive notifications when new postings come up. One last tip regarding where to find funding opportunities is you should also visit the site of the state agency that you would be interested in applying or looking for grants. Maybe you remember one that you saw a couple years ago from Department of Human Services. So you would visit DHS's website to see their postings there. But you will always find it here in the GATA grantee. I keep saying GATA grantee portal, but this is the GATA website. So clicking browse through the current funding opportunities or subscribing to that email list. So within this, you always want to make sure that you are receiving these notifications as soon as the notice of funding opportunity becomes available. Why? Because you want the most time to read through the information, to make sure you are eligible, and to make sure that you meet all of the requirements, all of the documents that are required for that funding information. So here, by you emailing this list, you will receive this notification. All right, I'm trying to advance here. Did I freeze up again? Oh, there we go. Oh, I skipped too much here. Let me go back. Now I'm trying to go back. I can't go back here. Lori, are you able to click? No.
No, they're not moving for me either.
Alec, we may need your assistance to click back on the page.
Adriana, he had a little internet blip earlier and he might be having a second one. So,
Okay.
So
one of the things as we kind of get readjusted here, I do want to say that state and agencies, there is a minimum date, minimum time that notice of funding opportunities are posted, and those are posted minimally for 30 days. This is why it's important that you make sure that all of your information is kept up to date. As you would look at these, this is a glimpse here, a screen snip of what you will see when you click on that third link of what are the current notice of funding opportunities available. Notice this little sticker, the GMS, the green sticker, that identifies the application or the notice of funding opportunity that is posted within Amplifund. So this is where the information, you could find it, you could read through it. Once you click on that link, it will take you to, I don't want to click too far forward here. Let me click one time. All right. I don't want to click too far ahead here like I did the last time. Oh, there we go. Okay, so one of the things here when you click on that green sticker link, you're going to see it's going to take you to an actual page that you could find these opportunities. So within that screen, you could read through just a high level of what that opportunity is, the requirements, and if you choose to apply for that opportunity, you will simply hit apply. Remember that do you have access to Amplifund on behalf of your organization? Do you need to check that before you find this an opportunity? When you click on it, you're going to see basic information. When will a technical assistance opportunity come up with, as far as when that agency will talk specifics about that notice of funding opportunity? questions that are posted for that opportunity are also there. So it's all the different types of information that you could find. And with this, I am gonna pass it over to Lori on the updates to the uniform guidance.
All right, thank you, Adriana. Yes, so Adriana's walked through, the grantee portal, identified our new user guide, resources, and different things. And as we all know, we now have updates to the uniform guidance coming up for October 1 that we will need to work into our processes as well as it's effective. So as I just stated, it's effective 10/1/2024. Overall, the revisions are a plain English rewrite of what the current requirements are. The majority of the revisions were simply clarifications of the original intent, not actual changes to the rule. So just clarifying where they've had a lot of questions, thought they were clear, but determined, there were gray areas. So they clarified a lot of rules in a lot of places. I'm not covering all of that. The National Grant Management Association provided a webinar just a week or so ago, and it was a 3-hour webinar just on all of those types of changes. And so we don't have that kind of time. Plus, nobody wants to listen to me talk for 3 hours. So one of the major changes that they made was they replaced the use of non-federal entity with recipient or subrecipient. And that's in most areas. When the final guidance comes out in October, you'll see they do still use the term non-federal entity, but only in certain areas, certain sections. It's not across the board, but mostly they did replace it with recipient or subrecipient, just to clarify that we are all considered a non-federal entity if we receive an award from directly from the feds or from a pass-through entity. One of the other changes that they made was now tribal governments are afforded the same flexibility as the state governments. So, for example, in procurement, states have always been allowed to follow their own state rules. All other organizations must follow 2 CFR 200. Now, with the revision, now they've included tribal governments along with the states, so they can follow they will have the flexibility to follow their own tribal rules, just as a state has to follow their own state rules. So I just went at this changes at a glance because, like I said, there are a lot of changes, and while they will impact our processing, it impacts grant awards and all aspects of grants. We're really kind of wanted to focus on GATA and how these changes will impact some of our processes, but mainly just give you the high level overview of what some of the changes are. So one of the things is they've increased thresholds throughout. So as Lily Polly mentioned earlier, the single audit threshold increasing from $750,000 to $1 million. Now that is effective for recipients and subrecipients who have fiscal years on or after 10/1/2024. So if your fiscal year, it will not impact you until your fiscal year that starts after October the 1st. So the de minimis rate, it is increasing from 10% to 15% of modified total direct costs. And while the calculation of modified total direct costs did not change, the allowance for subawards it increased from $25,000 to $50,000. So if you recall the calculation of modified total direct cost, you can include up to the first $25,000 of each subaward as a part of your MTDC base. Now, come October 1, that amount will be $50,000 now. Supplies and equipments, those both increased from $5,000 to $10,000. And fixed amount subawards increased from $250,000 to $500,000. It did not change that prior approval must be given to issue those fixed amount of subawards, but the threshold for those awards did increase. They added a new section 200.217 regarding whistleblower protections. And for internal controls in section 303, they added the requirement or clarification really that not only must you establish and maintain internal controls, you must also document those internal controls. I think that was, understood as being a requirement, but now it's clarified. The recipients, subrecipients must establish, document, and maintain internal controls. And then they also added helpful guidance, reasonable cybersecurity, and other measurements to the requirements for safeguarding personal or sensitive information within those internal control activities. So no definition of what reasonable cybersecurity is, no definition of what other measures they could be referring to, but they did at least put in there the requirements that we all need to be thinking about in today's world of changing technologies. Then they did remove some requirements. So certification requirements for payment requests, no longer. So if you all remember in section 415, there is a little paragraph that you have to certify to that the information is accurate and correct to the best of your knowledge. That language, it was required for all financial reporting, payment requests, etc. Now it is not required for each payment request any longer. They also removed the prohibition on using geographic preferences for procurement activities and removed the requirement for prior approval for the purchase of real property, equipment, entertainment costs, the use of participant support costs, and taxes. There are still requirements around those areas, but just you will no longer need to request the prior approval for those activities. Now for budget revisions and revision to program plans, it is a little more detailed. So it added that the federal awarding or pass-through entity must review the request for revision within 30 days and notify, and I see a nice little typo there, and should notify that the recipient or subrecipient of their decisions. If they are not going to make the 30-day mark, the federal agency or the pass-through entity must inform your recipients, subrecipients in writing when you can expect that decision. Added or clarified that prior approval is necessary for changes in key personnel that are identified by name or position in the award. And this is for your employees, your contractors, etc. So if you specifically named people, either by name or position, that are going to carry out an award. Any changes to that plan must have prior approval before you can implement those changes. If your subaward activities were not included in your application or the approved award agreement is not a part of your terms and conditions of that award, you must have prior approval to make any changes there. So it's not applicable to changes. You've identified that you're going to use subrecipients and you've named them. If those subrecipients changed, that doesn't need a prior approval. But if that was not included in your award or your application up front, then yes, you would need prior approval to do those activities. Transferring funds between construction and non-construction needs prior approval, and also prior approval to receive a no-cost extension on your program. Changes to the basic factors of allowability. They've added that administrative costs. So when you're closing out that award, that all happens after the end of your performance period. And costs incurred after the end date of your performance period are not allowable. However, they've added for administrative costs that are incurred after the period of performance up to the due date of your final reports. Those administrative costs that are directly associated with those closeout activities are allowable now. And they can be included in your last budget period in your payment recourse. And so administrative costs with associated with closeout, they are allowable or will be allowable on 10-1, and more information on that in section 472 of the uniform guidance. All right. So here's my slide. So requirements are not optional, but how we carry out those requirements, what our frameworks are, what our processes are, can be changed, should be changed if they're not working as intended, not gathering the results, causing administrative burden. Something can look perfect on paper, make complete sense. And so you move forward, and then you find out that, it's not as pretty off paper as it was on paper. So how do you change? How do you adapt? We have that flexibility. We do that through our partnering. So partnering with organizations like Forefront and Illinois Partners, that's how we get things done. That's how we are identified to true problems that are more than just an individual grantee experiencing issues for one reason or another. This is how we know what changes, what do we need to focus on. So having that collaboration tremendously helps us. We place great value on our stakeholders and making sure that our frameworks, as we're standardizing, as we're coming together with those uniform requirements, that it is in the best interest, that it is reducing administrative burden. It may seem like, okay, in some areas we've increased administrative burden here, but you need to stop and think of what benefits does that give you later on in the process? What did that alleviate? So in overall, what is your administrative burden? Has it decreased? We hope so. That is the intent, that overall our burdens are decreased by centralizing and by working together, making sure that we have those. We're hearing from all of our partners, from our grantees, our state agencies, what's causing them pain points in carrying out some of these tasks, So that's why we look to collaborate on these items. We want Illinois to be successful. And in order to do that, our grantees, all of our partners, our agencies, we all have to be successful and able to carry out. So, just gotta do it. Right. We like playing on the word gotta do it. So one additional thing that I do want to talk about, we are so excited to announce that our GATA learning management system, our modules are complete. They are live. We have links on our website. So under the training tab on gata.illinois.gov. And there are instructions, of course. We partnered with UIS to develop these courses. They host them for us. So there are some steps that you must follow in order to get into those trainings. And we have that document. Clicking on accessing the trainings, this will allow you to set up your account to access the courses. We have a GATA Foundations course. It is just a general overview of all the GATA process. What are the grant making requirements? What are the foundations that we are building on for managing our grants? Then we have a module or a course on pre-award, post-award, audits, and indirect costs. All of these courses are focused on from the grantee perspective. Yes, they're helpful for state agencies to know and understand as well, but these courses are from that grantee perspective. They're all live out there. You can go watch them now, or after this session, right? But all courses are live, and we would love to hear feedback on this as well. Our next step, we're looking at standardizing our training for our state agencies. And what format that's going to take, is still a little undecided, but we are working on more specific direction to the grantees, having it actually tangible, having guided training for the grantees so that they can become more standardized in their implementations. We have a lot of great staff working in the agencies, doing the best, to try to understand and to follow the intent of GATA. But there are differences. So we are looking to rectify that next. So that's what is on our plate for FY25. Along with so many other things, but that we are excited about this training for our LMS being available to everyone now. So it just all became live like the end of May. So you are actually the first ones that are hearing the announcement of the full course being available. So like I said, we are very excited about that piece. I know also I did not talk about this, wasn't sure how the timing was all going to work out. We have had several things that we wanted to cover, and ARMS, the Audit Report Review Management System. If you recall, if you were in last year's session, we were talking about the rollout and that it would be going live and such. And absolutely gotta stay in the know. Absolutely. The ARMS system, ARMS 2.0 is new. And so for any organizations out there that have submitted their audit under the new format, hopefully it is more intuitive for you now. We do ask a few more questions to get some more information. to just kind of guide you. We have instructions for you to print off based on your specific audit type requirements, instructions to print off for your auditors. There's been a lot of improvement there, I believe, in how that process works. So I did want to just touch on that. Like I said, we didn't go through that at this point, but we're happy to answer any questions, comments on that system or anything else we've talked. So I think that pretty much wraps up what we have to cover for today. So I'll turn it back over to you, Holly.
Hi, thanks, Lori. Thanks everybody for hanging in there. I know this is a lot. I want to make sure we call out the potentially unanswered questions in the Q&A. And it's possible you've touched on these, so if so, I apologize. But the first question I see is, applying for state grants, do you have a CAGE code from the federal government?
Yeah, in sam.gov, they've changed that somewhat as to who needs a CAGE code. We don't use it, but from the federal government perspective, yes, I believe you still do. And that is assigned to you similarly as to what it was before. When you sign up for that UEI and go through that registration at sam.gov, you are provided a CAGE code or assigned a CAGE code.
Okay, thank you. If there's follow-up, please chime in. The next question is, in the implement and report phase of the grant life cycle, what factors into delays of grant funds going to grantees? I hear of smaller community-based organizations unable to access grant funds because they can't afford a reimbursement model or having to rely on existing cash flows. So this comes up a lot with payment delays, and so I understand that's not entirely in your control, Lori, but if you want to comment on that, that would be helpful.
Okay, that was a long question, and I can't see it in my Q&A. So could you start?
Okay.
Can you say the first part of it again?
Yeah, happy to. In the implement and report phase of the grant life cycle, what causes delays of funds actually going to grantees in your view?
Yes, there really is there could be many reasons for delaying there. One is just the approval process, but there are parameters from the comptroller that state agencies are to follow. Prompt payment interest is a thing and available for, you know, a lot of the payments, not everything. There is the opportunity. So for grant programs for payments, there's the advanced payment methodology, and then there's the reverse reimbursement methodology. Advanced payment grantees have to have certain systems and abilities. They have to meet specific requirements to be eligible to receive advanced payment. Reimbursement, then, it comes after that. If they're not eligible for that advanced pay, then reimbursement is the option to use. But as you stated, there is not everyone is flush with cash to be able to do that. So, or you don't even have to be flush with cash, I guess. You just don't have the cash resources to be able to fund the activities on a reimbursement basis. There is a third option that works in conjunction with the other two, and it's a working capital advance. And all programs are eligible to use any of these payment methods. So that working capital advance provides an upfront payment to the grantee that has to be managed and reconciled, etc., monitored But after that initial cash advance for the first like 60 days of estimated expenditures, then it can go on to a reimbursement basis so that your advance is being reimbursed, but you're being given cash up front to manage that process. So hopefully that answered that.
Yeah, and Ace has touched on a really important question that is largely what's driving our efforts around government contracting reform. So I want to acknowledge the complexity here because there's not a simple answer. Some of the things we're trying to do through our advocacy and improvements, hopefully to state law, would be to help providers understand how to become eligible for advance payments and also improve the awareness among providers for when interest penalties apply. The flip side of this is us working with the state agencies to improve training opportunities, because a lot of what we hear from them is that sometimes documentation received from grantees is inaccurate or incomplete, which slows down the payment cycles. So to whatever extent we can help providers improve our side of things and also clarify state law and make sure everybody understands when interest and advance payments are available. But we also want to add better timeframes to statute where currently it's vague. So there aren't always timeframes that state agencies must adhere to complete various stages of the payment cycle. Statute is generally kind of silent on those timeframes. And so those are some of the things we're trying to negotiate with state agencies. What is a reasonable amount of time for state agencies to complete their piece of the process, so that providers get paid on time and don't have cash flow issues, which we know are extremely difficult, especially for smaller providers. So we understand how important this issue is. So I just wanted to spend a minute talking about that because it's one that's a big priority to us going forward. And if Lauren, if you want to chime in on any of this, feel free to jump back on camera, but especially if you think I missed something important. So thanks for raising that, Aces. I hope that's helpful for now. And I wish I had a more straightforward answer. There's a lot of work to be done in that space.
Holly, can you go back to the first question relating to a not-for-profit actually receiving a EUI number and the applying for a state grant? Is it, and I think I asked the question, is it really required to have the cage code number? I just got an email today from sam.gov that, you know, we passed the RS validation and, you know, your RS TIN number, all that matches. And so we have the EUI number. So is it really required to, the cage code, Lori or Holly, for a not-for-profit in the state of Illinois who just applying for a state grant? Is the cage code required?
Lori,
No. Yeah, no, that it is not required for a state issued award. The cage code is required for a direct federal award. And so you'd have to follow the requirements there, but we don't collect that information for the cage code. If any agencies are requiring or need that cage code, I would like to be aware of that as to what they're using it for or what their requirements are. But to my understanding, it's not required for a state issued award, and that's regardless of what the funding source is.
So you only need the EUI number?
Yes, we just need that UEI number, that unique entity identifier. And you do have to have it. You do have to have it registered at sam.gov. So that is one of the changes that sam.gov did make. It's like a two-step process now. You can receive simply a UEI, or you can receive your UEI and register at sam.gov. And yeah, and so you have to do both things for the state. You have to obtain that UEI, and then you have to go through the registration process at sam.gov for that UEI. Guidance will tell you that recipients or subrecipients, they must obtain the UEI, but they're not required to register. And at the federal level, that may be true. But at the state level, we do require it. That is the only way we can validate certain information, like the debarred and suspended status at the federal level, those types of things. So it's the only way we can verify automatically without placing a lot of burden on our agencies. So we do require that registration piece. And I do see the question in the chat that can you receive a sam.gov good in GATA if you don't have a cage code? Yes, absolutely. Like I said, we're not validating, and we're not pulling that information in to our system. So the cage code does not impact your qualification status. And I do see a question in the Q&A box clarifying the changes. So all changes are effective 10/1/24. So, and for the single audit, like I said, that is translated into fiscal years that start on or after 10/1, but everything else is effective 10/1.
Because of that, we're hoping to leverage that timing to convince our General Assembly to move forward on these compliance issues and the agreed GATA changes. So we may be working on that in veto session, which is in November. So more to come on that. Okay, there is another question in chat. Considering the timeline of the life cycle, in your experience, what's the average time from NOFO to review? How long are state agencies able to get grant funds out? I'm not sure that there may be a typo there. There's conversations about challenges for grantees being able to spend funds in a short amount of time in a fiscal year. So I think the question is, you know, if it's a year's contract and they don't get the first payment until several months into that fiscal year, but are expected to do the same amount of work, that can be challenging. So do you have data about the average time from NOFO to review, or how long it takes to get funds out the door on average?
Yeah. Not at this time, not on a general statewide level, but I would look to Adriana if she has any additional insight on this, being at an agent, you know, having come from grant making agency, actually one of the grant making agencies that's climbing up to be one of the larger grant making agencies. So
Yes, thank you. There, from the time a NOFO is published, remember that the NOFO state agencies are required to post a notice of funding opportunity for a minimum of 30 days. So one of the things that happens as a state agency, that it falls on, it's also a burden on them to try to make sure that they get the funds out into the community in within that time period. The unfortunate part of it is that many times agencies don't really know when they will be receiving those funds until maybe May for that next state fiscal year. So agencies may have an idea in February, in March, but in May is when they will know that starting July 1st, they will have X program with X amount of money to spend. So what does that mean for you? What that means is that the agencies are in a hurry to try to get those notice of funding opportunities posted for 30 days. So that's already June. Then when the application closes, they need about maybe 3 weeks for a for that review to happen, then notification sent out to the applicants that they are going to receive that award. But then there's a whole part that is pre-award process, which is where budgets are being confirmed and finalized. Program activity is then being finalized by you and agreed upon. Then the agreement is signed. Typically, that may be anywhere from 30 days to maybe 40 to maybe 60 days from that award notification. So if we were thinking about that time frame, July is when, June is when that NOFO closes. So the end of June, I'm just giving this as a general timeline. Then if it takes about maybe 45 days to 60 days, we're already talking about August, September, when the agreement is being signed. So September to June 30th is when that period of performance for that state fiscal year will happen. So we understand, and I'm saying the collective we as grantees, as applicants, we as state and agencies know that that time frame is very tight. But please understand that the agencies are willing to work to make sure that those funds are being spent appropriately. Those funds are going out the door, because it's important, just like Lori said, for the grantee to be successful, the agency will be successful, the state overall will be successful. So this time frame is not only a race for you, but it's also a race for state and agencies to make sure that those funds are going out the door and that they are being spent appropriately as stewards of state funds. It is important for everyone. So with on all of that, it could vary depending on the state and agency, but it could be anywhere from the time from posting to actual award, can be anywhere from 3 months that could happen. So I hope I answered that question. I did see another one come in about the registration process, the timeline. Registration within the GATA grantee portal will happen within one day, within a matter of hours. The thing that may take a little bit of time is, do you have your SAM.gov registration in order? Do you have your UEI? Remember, it's a two-part registration. Sometimes people do the UEI, but then forget to do the SAM registration, or the opposite happens. So making sure that you have all of those items together, then when you are logging into the system and you're putting in those numbers, the system will then start working. It will communicate with all of the different systems, the Secretary of State, SAM.gov. It will all come in together, and the system will update automatically overnight, usually within 24 hours. Then you could log back in, check out your GATA grantee screen to make sure everything is in good standing. If something is out of place, you click that help button, and it is a self-help. So that will give you that information. As you're doing that, someone else from your agency could already start checking out the CSFA, start downloading that notice of funding opportunity, start reading that information and making sure you're getting all your partners together to submit a full, complete application. Keep those notice of funding opportunity close dates in mind. Do not give yourself that last day. Give yourself 2 days before it's due to submit your application, because you don't want the system to be overloaded. You don't want yourself to be overloaded. The application closes at 5 p.m. Do not give yourself 4:45. Give yourself noon to start submitting that application, because you don't want to put yourself in that predicament of the unexpected, like we saw today, your an internet to go down, something else to happen. You want to give yourself time to fully submit an application. So keep that notice of funding opportunity deadline in mind and give yourself one extra day before it's due to submit your information.
Thank you for that. That's generally good advice for private sector funding as well. Grant writing 101.
Mhm.
I would say I just want to again acknowledge, like, we understand the seriousness of the issues raised by this question around when grant funds first get out the door, therefore compressing the work into a shorter time period and making it hard to pay staff in the meantime. So there's not an easy solution there, but that is part of what we're working on with our government contracting reform. And there are state agencies that have moved more in the direction of multi-year grants in order to address that and provide more continuity. And that's something that we'll continue to lift up as a best practice whenever possible. So more work to be done on that, but thanks for your comments, Adriana. It's helpful. I'll do a final call for any multi-year grants, game changer. Yes, indeed. It still requires an annual contract because of, General Assembly can't appropriate out fiscal years. They can only do 1 year at a time. But the agreements look to future years, barring any lack of performance or whatever. So last call for questions. We'll wrap up early. That's never a bad thing if needed. So I believe, forgive me if I mispronounced your name, but Theodis, do you have additional questions? I see your hand up, so I just wanted to double check.
No, I'm sorry. I need to lower it. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. No, you're fine.
I'm
That's
still
fine.
trying to amass this EUI number and the cage code, because I just had a bad experience with another state agency, and somehow they held up the funds because they basically said we need a cage code number. So, but anyway, I'll follow up with it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So we're going to wrap up. I just wanted to draw your attention to an upcoming opportunity in July where we will have the Illinois Department of Labor join us to talk about changes that impact nonprofit employers. The big feature there is the federal government's raising of the overtime salary, or the exempt salary threshold, which requires either salaries to increase or employees to be reclassified as non-exempt. So it's a big change with fiscal impact for all providers, not just nonprofits, but we're going to look at that with their assistance. And we're trying to secure the attendance of an attorney from the private sector to join that panel as well. That's to be announced shortly. We're locking that down now. So this next event will look at all of the things that nonprofit employers need to be aware of. So it might be a good one to share with your HR folks. If you're not the one that covers that at your agency, make sure they're aware of this opportunity. And in general, Forefront will be announcing our next fiscal year's cycle of programming in the policy realm very soon. So watch this event page that's on this slide here for more information, and make sure you're signed up for our emails so you'll get those announcements proactively. I also want to share, before we sign off, our Policy Action Center to make sure folks are signed up for that, which is where we release breaking news related to legislative activity and other things in the policy world. It's in addition to our kind of general bi-weekly newsletters. So that's where in the future you would have the opportunity to follow what we're doing on government contracting reform, for example, and know when we need folks to be calling legislators and engaging and sharing their stories. So we'll put that link in chat, and I'll do a final call for questions. If anybody has any final questions, or Lori or Adriana, if there's anything you want to do in terms of closing remarks or things you may have missed before, I'll give you a chance to do that. And once we're done, we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Yeah. Other than thanking you, thanking Forefront Illinois Partners, and thanking all the attendees for being here and listening to us, working with us. We truly do appreciate the partnership. We do appreciate feedback. So again, we can't change our requirements, but we can change how we carry them out, how we meet those requirements. So we're happy. We want the feedback. If it's not working, we want to know. We can't make any changes if we don't know that there are of the issues out there. So we do value these partnerships, and thank you for having us and allowing us to talk.
Likewise, we're very grateful for your time. And I just want to underline what Lori just said, which is when you have challenges, let us know. Let GATA know, let Forefront know, let Illinois Partners know. That's the best way to make sure we keep tabs on the experiences of real world situations. And I know GATA has expressed repeatedly to us the willingness to help mitigate challenges. So if you have multiple contracts with different agencies, if the agencies are doing things differently in a problematic way, let them know, because they can help run interference on those kinds of things, because they're at that kind of higher level, and can help with things like that. So just don't be afraid to raise your hand when you have challenges, and let one of us know. We're all here for you, and we'll do what we can. So I want to apologize for the technical difficulties we had today. That happens, unfortunately, in this remote world, but we'll try to do better next time and make sure that doesn't happen. So thanks for your patience. And you can all look for the follow-up email to include the slides, the recording, and the evaluation link, so that you can help us learn what to do better next time. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank
Have a
you.
great day. Enjoy the weekend ahead.
Yep.
Thank you.